Hey everybody, it's Lauren here from Hunter Valley Ants and welcome to our YouTube channel. I'm here today with Dr. Sam Robertson from the Institute of Molecular Bioscience at the University of Queensland. I'll just quickly start off by explaining what Hunter Valley Ants do. We're located in the Hunter Valley in New South Wales, Australia. Matt and I specialise in the legal removal of and preservation of Australian ant species that pose a risk to landowners or risk of being destroyed. Most of the time, there's at least one person on the property who is allergic to ants. Matt's been removing nests for about 6 years now. I am about 9-10 months into learning, and across that time, I've encountered a lot of stings. Today, I've actually just come from doing a dig. We've been out there since about 6:30 this morning, so I've stepped away to come and do this interview. But having been stung so much, I have had a fair bit of interest in learning about venom. And when I've been reading the research papers, there's been one name that keeps popping up, and that is Dr. Sam Robinson. So reached out, and he has been so kind to lend us his time this morning. So Dr. Robinson, in 2018, you and Dr. Unheim, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Unheim.
Unheim, okay.
Yeah.
Unheim and yourself completed the first comprehensive study on ant venom and revealed toxins that stimulate the human nervous system and that cause pain. Mm-hmm. So what made you choose ants over any other insect species that are venomous?
Right. It's quite a simple answer to the question, and that's that I haven't had them. Someone gave us a colony of ants, or not a whole colony, but a bunch of them, and I looked into it, and sort of it might seem surprising, but people have been studying ant venoms. They were some of the first venoms to be studied back in the 16th century. I think a guy showed that formicine ants, actually the main component in their venom, well, not really a venom, but what they spray defensively is formic acid. But since then, nothing's really been done. And you know, ants play a big part in our lives, whether we know it or not. They're really important animals in ecosystems. And it's quite amazing that we didn't know what was actually what the chemistry was underlying stings from these ants. So it was an easy choice. And my interest is in stings, the chemistry of stings, and specifically what's in them and what those are doing to our bodies and what that can tell us about our pain signaling pathways. So yeah, that's why ants back in 2018. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next question, what has your study taught us about how ant venom works?
Yeah, well, you sort of mentioned that when you introduced it. It's that, and you know, when you think about it, it seems probably obvious that ants have specific toxins in their venom. At least the ants that sting and hurt us, they have specific toxins in their venom that actually target our sensory nerves. So these are nerves that innervate basically our whole body, and when they get activated, they send signals to our brain. And so if we have nerves that are specific for pain signals, we have a whole bunch of different types of nerves that are specific for pain signals. So for example, if you hit your thumb with a hammer, there's a specific type of nerve that will send a signal to your brain telling you that was painful and to withdraw your hand and not do that. So what the ants are doing, they're actually hijacking those pathways, those pain pathways. They have specific chemicals in their venom that will activate your pain pathways and make you feel like you've hit your thumb with a hammer in the case of a bull ant. Yeah, I mean, it seems obvious that these ants have those toxins, but no one had sort of revealed what they were. Or how they were working, and that's really what we did in that study.
Awesome. Okay, this is a question from Billy Tamayo, who is a moderator, or an admin on the Australian Ant Lovers Forum. Part part of your study is milking ant venom, and he's asked, how do you milk an ant?
Yeah, we sort of invented a technique to get the venom, and that's you take like a thin ring of plastic and then you stretch over that, this sort of waxy, it's almost like cling film, but it's a bit waxier and firmer. And then you hold the ant with a set of tweezers, obviously, and hold it over those that surface, and the as you will know, bull ants, for example, are quite happy to sting away. And sure enough, they stung the plastic, and what we could see was these tiny little drops of liquid venom being deposited on the plastic as they stung it. And you know, we only actually had to do a few ants like that, and we got enough venom to figure out what was in it from that.
Matt said somewhere in the research he was reading something about electrodes being attached to the ants. Is that?
Yeah. Okay. So one technique that you can use, and we use this for collecting venom from spiders or centipedes, is that you can take a little really low voltage. There are a set of tweezers that have a voltage passing across the forceps, and you can actually stimulate the muscles in the venom gland to secrete the venom or push the venom out. We didn't need to do that for the ants. We tried it and it just wasn't necessary. They're quite happy to release their venom.
Yeah, one of the techniques we use, well, it is the technique we use when we're collecting the ants, especially when they come out for what we call a boil. So when we're collecting, especially at first, we'll dig a little bit of soil out and they come out with their natural instinct to kill you because that's what they want to do. They're protecting their nest. And so we'll be using 2 sets of what are crafting tweezers. So we make sure that the tweezers can't pull hair out of your arm. So with one hand, we'll get the middle of the ant, and then what they will do is they will immediately just try to, like, especially we give myrmecia furcatus and things like that, they will just go to sting the tweezer. And then because you're trying to tap them off and they're so aggressive, well, often with the other hand, you need to have another tweezer to push them off. So I can completely understand what you're saying. You wouldn't need anything to.
No, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. So you were talking before about how the similar thing of being hit on the thumb, those same pain receptors. So you might just be able to expand a little bit more on that with how your research can then be used to help with medical advancements.
Yeah. Okay. So everyone's familiar with pain, right? And obviously pain is useful. If you don't feel pain, you actually die pretty young. And that's because you don't know how to avoid dangerous situations. You don't learn to avoid that. But sometimes pain can go wrong. So you can get like chronic pain, right? And there are lots of different types of chronic pain. And we need treatments for that chronic pain. So by chronic pain, I mean pain that hurts and it just keeps on hurting for your whole life, right? And that the current treatment for it is, for most pains, is opioids. So things like morphine. But we've realized sort of over the last decade that it's actually been a mistake to use those for chronic pain, because obviously you can get addicted, and you start to become dependent on it. So they're really not appropriate for use in chronic pain, and we need alternatives. So what we're doing is basically writing, what I should say is, because we've had opioids, we've essentially been spoiled. We haven't gone looking for other things. We've really focused on those opioids. And so what I'm trying to do is basically build up that textbook knowledge of how our pain signaling works. And one resource we can use is these toxins from animal venoms that cause different types of pain. And what we're finding is that they actually target things on our nerves that we didn't perhaps know were involved in pain, or we didn't know they were involved in a certain way. So they're teaching us a lot about sort of the pain at a molecular level. And if we can understand that, then we can design better treatments to replace things like opioids.
Wow, that's so cool. So what research are you currently working on?
Yeah, quite a broad sweep of research. So like I said, my focus is on things that sting or bite and are known to cause pain. So I've actually been able to source venoms from a huge range of animals and even plants, and try and identify what these pain-causing toxins are. So obviously one of my favorite projects is the ants. So we've been looking at bull ants, obviously, and also you'd be familiar with, oh, actually, I don't know, do you get them down in Hunter Valley as the greenhead ants or green ants?
Oh yeah, we get contacted a lot from people who have said we've got green ant infestations in our yard. Can't even go outside now. Unfortunately, that's something that we can't remove. But it's a very big problem here.
Yeah, so I've been looking at their venoms. Obviously, they have quite a painful sting often, and it's actually a different sort of pain to the bull ants. So it's doing something chemically different to what the bull ants are doing, which is very interesting. I've been looking at a range of different wasps and bees, and also one area of research that we published recently was on spitting cobras. So I had a collaboration with a group in the UK who were interested in spitting cobras, and I helped them identify what the pain-causing toxins were in spitting cobra venoms, which spit their venoms at your eye and cause a lot of pain. And probably another local project has been looking at what's called gimpy or stinging tree. So that's quite common in the rainforests around here, and some of these species, so Dendronites excelsa is this huge rainforest tree, and it has stinging needles on its stems and leaves. And the sting from this tree is actually quite amazing. It you may, I don't know if you've been stung by it or not, but what happens is you get this shooting pain straight away that you would never expect from a plant. And actually that sort of creeps up your arm, and you can get pain in your chest and everything. And it will last several hours. A bad sting will last several hours. And then once it's gone away, actually, if you put something cold on that sting site, it will come straight back. And that will last for weeks after the sting. So it's quite an amazing tree. And what we've found is we found a new type of toxin that's in that tree. So this is a local Australian tree, and we found this new type of toxin, and it actually activates our pain signaling in a different way to cause those unique symptoms, and that tells us about different types of pain signaling.
Incredible. Okay, so I mentioned to you in an email all about my sting. So I've been stung by myrmecia dolosa, forficata, nigrosita, chisada, and piliventris. And I've kind of will rank them in that order of level of pain and severity, in level of reactions that I've had. And I rank dolosa as being the worst. And the reason for that, you mentioned green ants before, and I rank dolosa up there because the sting not just being so bad, but the duration of it carries out longer, much like a green ant, because I find they kind of hang around, that annoying pain that kind of comes and goes back. But also my reaction to that, Facebook actually mistook the image as being a self-harm post and took it down, which was just, I thought, kind of hilarious. Is this kind of pain reaction and also the localized reaction a personal thing, or is there actually particular ant species that people are going to get a more, at least on a painful reaction to?
Yeah, I think in myrmecia, the difference between stings is probably mostly down to a difference in the dose of venom that ant can deliver to you. It seems like it's a very similar mechanism used by different ants, different myrmeciae, myrmecia ants to cause pain. So a similar chemical mechanism. So I think it's probably down to the dose you receive. The green ants are a little different. So we've found that actually within a single colony, individual ants can have different venoms. So they have, some will not even have the main pain-causing toxins in their venom. Others will have multiple pain-causing toxins in their venom. And that kind of fits with at least my experience of green ant stings. You'll get some that just don't hurt at all. You know, you just brush it off and it might be slightly itchy for a few minutes and then goes away. Some that have a tiny little sharp pain, but then every now and then you'll get one that stings you, and it might have been able to sting you for, you know, 10 seconds without you noticing. But that pain can last, you know, upwards of half an hour, and it's just intense pain. So yeah, myrmecia, probably a dosage thing. Green ants tends to be an individual, related to the individual ant, and probably a dosage thing. And then of course we're all different, and we all respond differently to having stuff injected into us. So that's another variable, is differences between people getting stuff.
Yeah, I've got some epic scars on me from stings that have even gone through genes. So and the reactions, you know, ones that have happened on the hand go away. And I would say far worse than the sting is the after effects that can last for days or a week.
Yeah, I agree.
And the heat that comes off, if I measure the temperature difference between the red spot and off the skin, it can be between 1.5 degree temperature differences. So now it's always a matter of carrying the antihistamines whenever we dig, and so taking a lot of precautions there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, there is another variable I forgot to mention, and that's that it also, and you probably know this, depends where on your body you get stung, as to how much pain you feel. So probably the worst stings are around your lips and your nose. Also, the head can be very painful. But, you know, fingers, feet, a little bit less painful. Yeah.
And if you sit on an ant, it's not very nice. I learned that one on Christmas Eve. So our research has shown on another paper that approximately 3% of the population will have an anaphylactic reaction to a lot of the myrmecia species, like those same ones, Formicarda, Golosa, Nigroscincta. And so people have anaphylactic reactions, and that the myrmecia piriformis, am I pronouncing that right? Piriformis has claimed the most lives. Can someone like me who hasn't got a natural anaphylactic reaction actually develop one over time with having a lot of exposure to stings?
You're asking if you can do that?
Yeah. Develop one over time? Can it go?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. I think I just want to point out in that study, they say 3% of the population can have an anaphylactic reaction. I think probably more accurately, it was that 3% of the population had a reaction, and that could, you know, just be an allergic reaction, rather than a full-on anaphylaxis, right? So having an anaphylactic reaction to ants is probably certainly less common than 3% of the population, I would say. And it's probably actually not that much different to, say, honeybees. You know, maybe slightly more, but I suspect that if someone were to do a proper study on it, it probably wouldn't be that different. And the thing is, we're not actually reacting to the pain-causing toxins in the venom, we're reacting to just carrier proteins in the venom. So if you inject any protein into your body, it can cause a really bad reaction. And in some people that results in anaphylaxis, But over time, you're asking whether you can develop anaphylaxis over time.
If it can go from being in one system of the body and progressing to another. I kind of had a bit of a talk with my GP about it, and he was kind of leaning towards it, yes, but it takes a longer time and you'll start noticing different symptoms. But it
has been shown in some systems that you can develop sensitivity to stuff. So, for example, antivenoms. which is just another injection of different proteins. So if you have to take an antivenom for a snake bite or something, and you have to do that repeatedly, some people can become sensitized to that and actually become allergic to the antivenom itself. So there is precedent for it in some systems, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to ants. I think probably it's possible, but it's probably quite unlikely that you'll become sensitized. Yeah.
One thing that I have noticed personally, and I've been hearing it from people whose properties we are going out and clearing, is people saying over time my reactions are getting worse to them. So the way I was initially reacting to stings might be just like small, and now, you know, with that images of my leg, now I'm getting much larger, and people have said to us, oh, you know, I used to just get it, but now I'm getting tingling in my fingers and toes. So from our own kind of anecdotal evidence is that people are getting worse reactions if they're getting stung repetitively, but I just wasn't sure if there is kind of evidence there to kind of back up what we're seeing, I guess.
Yeah, I doubt that it's been studied specifically in myrmecia, but you might want to look at some studies on honeybee allergy and see if that increases over time, because it's essentially the same thing. So yeah, that's really interesting.
Okay, so a study based on 5 myrmecia species showed the median lethal dose is 0.18 to 0.35 milligrams per kilo, making myrmecia ants amongst the most toxic venom in the insect world. So can you do some maths for us, since you've done some milking? How many times would an ant need to sting you to get 0.18 milligrams of venom?
Sure. So I had to think about this. So I think an average ant would maybe give you about 200 micrograms of venom. So that's 1/5 of a milligram. So I worked out, I'm probably maybe repeating this wrong, but if you were a 70-kilogram person, you'd probably need to be stung by sort of 200 ants or something like that. But there's a complicating factor here, and that is that measurement, or that number, that 0.18, is based on an intravenous injection of the venom.
Oh.
And we never get stung intravenously, okay?
Yeah.
So you probably need to shift that number by about 10-fold, at least. So therefore, you need to be getting stung in the order of, say, 1 to 2,000 ants to actually have a toxic effect, which is reasonably unlikely, I think. I know there have been odd stories where dogs have been stung en masse, and it's resulted in the death of the dog. And that probably was around that level. And of course, most dogs are smaller than people, so they need a smaller dose for it to be toxic as well.
Yeah, one of the so the property we're working on at the moment, we now found, I think, in 1 acre, just at the rear of the property, we found, I think, about 7 or 8 colonies. And I was just saying to you before we started recording, we actually, as well, just leaving today, we found a hole, and we saw a little tassada run out, and then out of the same hole we saw a porphycata run out. So they're sharing a nest. It's so cool. But moving along, because there's all this shared land at the back, we've been getting all the neighbours coming over and telling us all of their stories of nests. So we're going to be quite busy. But on one of the properties nearby, there's actually like a childcare centre. So that's where we kind of go, okay, that's a priority place that we're going to go. Because if you've got very young children, we might not be dealing with a 70-kilo person. We might be dealing with a 7-kilo person. And that's where we've got more concerns. And the landowner that we're currently working on, she did have a dog that was stung, and she said it was, in horrible pain for 24 hours. So that, and who, even if it's not going to potentially kill a child, I could not imagine having a child myself. I could not imagine, just, them being stung for, 1 or 2 or 3. If you were to fall upon a nest, we've come across the nest on the next door neighbour's property that is as wide as my kitchen table, or possibly a little larger. It's about at least 2-3 meters long by about 1.5 meters approximately. It's the largest nest we've ever seen. So it's crazy, and it's got multiple entrances, the one. So that's what we're kind of dealing with in residential land. So yeah, we have a lot of concerns, and that's, you know, for safety reasons and for children being about. But it's good to know about that whole intravenous thing. But working with a lot of ants, sometimes we are collecting up to 1,000 ants in one dig if we're digging a big hole. And possibly with as large as we've ever seen, might be more. Who knows? All right, another question from Billy. Is anyone developing an anti-venom for myrmecia stings?
Not that I'm aware of. And I think the reason for that is that most people are unlikely to die from a myrmecia sting. So there's not a lot of, motivation behind it. Of course, some people can have anaphylactic reaction. So for those who have anaphylactic reactions to it, your best treatment is like an EpiPen, you know, adrenaline, rather than an antivenom, because chances are at some point you'll also react to the antivenom. So an EpiPen should usually solve most anaphylactic reactions, I would say.
All right. Opinions, because I'm sure you've been stung sometime when doing your studies.
Many times. By many different things.
All right. Best way to treat an ant sting. What do you reckon?
Yeah, well, like you said, you can't. The initial sting, it hurts, but you know it's going to go away in a couple of minutes, right?
Yeah, suck it up.
You know, maybe 5-10 minutes at the most.
I think for me personally, like generally with like formicatas, whatever, I will just put on my left hand, usually just the area, put a bit of pressure on. I find pressure helps with most of them.
Right.
And then I just keep working with my right hand. Matt usually does a bit of a song and a dance about it, and I laugh at him. But it's quite funny. One time, one of the ants was just mistaking me as terrain and was just walking across my stomach, and I moved and it freaked out. I got stung that way. It's why I generally don't wear much when I'm digging. There's no such thing as protective clothing, so I'd rather be able to feel them on my skin. And so I was like, oh, I've just got stung. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, and just pluck them off and just suck it up. But it's it's generally the after effects that are the worst. So I just say have the antihistamines, which will help reduce the redness, hopefully, and your reaction. If you really need it, have some ice. But if you're out on a site, having access to ice is usually not a thing. But stingos, there's no such thing as stingos working. It's just a joke. But what I learned on Christmas Day, when all of the pharmacies were closed and I was dealing with a horrible reaction on my bottom, was Bonjela. It takes away the itch, and it got the nickname Bumjela. So, but the main thing is just suck it up.
Suck it up. Or everything you've said it makes a lot of sense. It's exactly what I would say. You know, ice if you can't handle the initial pain, and then antihistamine or something like Bonjela, a local anesthetic.
Just numb it.
And of course it's different if you're getting anaphylaxis symptoms, then you need an EpiPen or something more serious.
But I find it's the next day that is the worst, and the itch is insane, is what I find. That's the worst of it all, is the ongoing itch.
One thing I've discovered where you've got an itchy sting the following day, the best thing is to not let it get warm. As soon as it gets warm, it's just insanely itchy. So I'll try and leave it exposed to like cooler air if possible. But you know, if you get stung on your feet, you'll wake up in the night and your feet are just, warm at the bottom of your bed, and it's just so itchy.
And the area in itself becomes so hot. Like it just naturally heats up. Like I said, I use one of those thermometers that's for the forehead, and the temperature difference between the site and off the site is, at least 1 degree difference.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a question here from Jackson Patrick. I kind of reworded it a bit, but what do you think is the coolest insect and why?
So many to choose from.
Pressure's on.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of spider wasps. So these are these wasps that will go out and hunt spiders. So in the most famous ones are the tarantula hawks over in the US. So these are these huge wasps, and they will actually go out and hunt tarantulas. They'll capture them, sting them, paralyze them, and then feed them to their larvae. In Australia, we have a version of that, which is actually, I don't know the common name. I think we just call it giant spider wasp, and they hunt the giant huntsman. Yeah, they're probably close to my favorite. It's just because they've got this amazing sting. Like, you get stung by that, a bull ant sting just pales in comparison. It's quite astounding. And they're basically invincible. Like, the spiders, they win 99% of their battles with these spiders, and they have no natural predators. Nothing will go near them because of that sting. So yeah, they're definitely my favorite.
Awesome. And final question, and this one's definitely for me. If you could do any kind of study on ants and you had no financial resource or time restrictions, what would be your dream research?
Right. Probably what I'm doing now, actually. So I'm looking at identifying the pain-causing toxins from some of the most notoriously painful ants. So these are, one of these probably from, I think it's South and Central America, is the bullet ant. And it's called the tokendera, which means the one who wounds deeply. Or the bullet ant, says it all. Apparently it feels like you're being shot when you get stung by this ant.
Oh, wow.
So it's reputedly the world's most painful insect sting. And I've been working on identifying the toxins behind that. So I should mention it causes pain for like an entire day, and it's just intense, excruciating pain. Actually, some of the local tribes in the Amazon they'll weave the ant, like 100 of these ants, into these gloves. And as an initiation rite for the young men, they'll put their hands into these gloves and get stung by these ants. And it's just insane, I think. And there's another ant in North America. They're also actually throughout the Americas called harvester ant. And there's a whole bunch of different species, but one that I'm working with is the Maricopa harvester ant. So that's from around Arizona, the deserts around there. And when that stings you, you don't feel it initially, but then it gradually builds over about 10 minutes, and you just have this intense, deep, drilling pain that you would have never experienced before. And your arm just drip of wherever you were stung. The sting site just begins dripping and dripping with sweat. Like it's just bizarre. So I'm working on identifying what's behind that. Yeah, of course, I've been stung by that. I had to test to see if it worked. I keep a record of all the stings I've experienced. And if I find something new, I test that sting as well. And actually, I've been posting them on Instagram and Twitter, if you're interested. So it's at Sting Science. So these are different, my experiences of different stings. And I include things like bull ants. And I give them a rating and a description of the sting.
That is so something.
Some people might find that interesting, and it's sort of an Australian version of it. I've included a lot of Australian stinging things on it.
I started doing similar things with just Matt personally until the day that I did get stung on my butt, and then I was like, we are not documenting this one. And I haven't really been stung since. But yeah, I find it so interesting because no one really does does any research on the
That's
stings
right,
and
yeah.
everything. So that's definitely something I'll have a look at. So it's at Sting Science.
Yeah. So that's on
Fantastic.
Instagram or Twitter. You can find
Instagram.
that. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
You're
It's been
welcome.
fantastic talking to you. Thank you for joining. And people can find more information about your research. What's the best way?
I mean, you can just Google Sam Robinson UQ probably, and you'll find some stuff. But also on my social media, Sting Science handles are probably a good place to start if you're more familiar with social media. Yeah. Yeah, and keep an eye out for different Sting stories coming out.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Cheers, you too.